With this presentation, I'll demonstrate how to create orders from an estimate, purchase orders that is, from an estimate. So if we go to the estimate, here we have estimate number 1. Had you watched the presentation regarding creating an interactive estimate, this is the estimate that was generated during that presentation. So I'll revisit that estimate by selecting it in the list here and go to the selected estimate. So here it is here, and if I just look at these timber items here, for example, you'll notice that I've got two different cost codes here, and if you see up here, the nominated supplier for each of these items is the same nominated supplier. Now if I simply went to orders and clicked on create these the tagged orders, I'd have to tag them first obviously, but create the tagged orders, I would end up with two separate orders for the same supplier, because there's two separate cost codes here. Generally speaking, you would definitely buy your framing materials before you needed your moulding, so that's why they are on two separate codes, because under normal circumstances with a dwelling, you would purchase your framing and get your frame up and your roof on and enclosure before you purchase your mouldings for obvious reasons. But in this instance, I want to demonstrate how you can force all of these items onto the one purchase order. So on this tab up here that says purchase orders, if I tag all of these items, so each of these selected items here are tagged, 7 of them, they've got two separate codes. Now if I want to unify the code, in other words put them all on the same code, I click on this button up here that says unify the code for the tagged items, and I say yes, and I choose this code and say yes. You'll now notice all of these orders have the same code. Now if they've all got the same supplier, which in this instance they do, then for all intents and purposes a single order will be generated. So let's tag them, and I'll click on create orders for the tagged items, and I say yes. They're done. Now you'll notice that those items are now locked. That means that they can't be deleted and they can't be edited and they can't be used to recreate the order. That's a safeguard to ensure that you don't create the order twice. If you need to reprint the order, once those orders have been generated, like they have been in this instance, we can reprint them as many times as we like. Now if I go to list all active orders, this button up here, there the orders are. Now there's only one order because there was no previous orders here, and I only opted to create one order. So over here you'll notice here where it says what's the origin of this order, estimate number 1. So we'll always be able to determine who or from what estimate the order was generated. Now if we were to create an instant order, then it wouldn't be associated with an estimate, it would just be a standalone order, and in which case it wouldn't say over here estimate number 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. It would say instant, meaning that it was generated standalone. If the order was copied, in other words if we copied the selected order to a new job, so the contents of this order was required for another job without creating an estimate, it would say to give you the number of the order from which it was copied in the origin field here, and we'll demonstrate all of those in various videos. So here is the order. Now if I go to the details of the order, you'll see here are all the items from that particular order. Now let me just point out a couple of things here. On this tab, there's two tabs at the top, order details and delivery instructions. With the delivery, on the delivery instructions tab is where you put the date required. If there's no date required, it will tell you, and I'll demonstrate that first. Over here, if I tag this order to be printed and print the tagged order and say yes, you'll come up here, hold to be advised because there's no delivery date. So this is where we print the order out and send it in advance to the supplier prior to us needing it at the site, just in case there's some of the materials on here that may need to be ordered in, for example. So the order's placed, so the supervisor then simply calls it forward. So there's no need to be rushing around from the job, measuring materials, running off to the supplier and placing the order and waiting for the order to be made up. You simply tell them to hold it and call it forward when it's needed. Now the calling forward process happens, first of all I'll cover this situation here where I've closed that order. Now it says a cutting list exists for this order. Now if those cut lengths weren't part of the description, or we wanted, in addition to the order itself, a cut list, we click yes here and the cut list is generated as a second page to the order. So it says estimate number 1, purchase order number 5260, page number 2, and here are all the cutting list items. Useful for sending off suppliers in order for them to hand this off to the yardman to go and pull the materials out of the racks without actually handing him a copy of the order, because all the information relating to the order is on the actual cut list here. So that's another advantage when you have cut lengths attached to orders. Getting back to what I was talking about a moment ago was about this delivery instructions. If I say delivery request, if I click on that, we're going to get a message saying we can't call it forward because there's no date required. So over here, if I put the date required now and I say I need this order for this particular day, and I put an order and I say a note and I say place under cover in garage, that's a note that will be printed onto the order. So let's look at the delivery request now. So if I click on here, we get this call forward. Now this is used in conjunction with orders that are placed in advance. So it could be, we've got the supervisor's name, Harry Buttkicker, mean mother of a man. And down here we have a note to the supplier saying that they're, you can read that for yourself there. And on here it gives the order details, the order number and the date required, and the special instructions that you want them to follow when they're making the delivery. So call forward delivery requests are wonderful things for conveying information precisely to the supplier for orders that you have placed in advance that you're now calling forward. So that's another advantage. If I print this order now, print this tagged order, say yes, you'll see in fact on this order we got two notes, the delivery instructions and or special note, which is this note here applies only to this order, where this note here applies to all orders until it's changed. Now that's what we call the global note. So let's have a look where that happens. Say no to the order. Down here, see, where we are, global note. Set the set or select the global note. So here we have it, and there's 5 options. A blank one, I always leave one blank so that if you don't want a note at all, you would tag that one and no note will be printed. You can use this one or that one or that one or that one. So whatever note you want, you can predefine 4 of them here, leaving one blank, and tag the one you want to be printed with the order. So that's where those global notes come from, and you have control pardon me, over what is actually printed on that particular order. So that gives you a lot of advantages. Now, say for argument's sake, we've got this supplier as a nominated supplier, Forsyth & Romano. As I understand it, they're no longer in business, but nonetheless, Forsyth & Romano on this one is a nominated supplier. Say I wanted to get a cross quote. I wanted to send this order off to, say, Bunnings to get their take on what it's worth. Well, what we can do here is down here I can say I click on B for Bunnings, and you'll see down here Bunnings is now selected, and if I say yes, Bunnings is now the nominated supplier. And over here I can say get this order quoted, and there's the order with the content and the quantities, along with you would send off a delivery note, a cutting list I should say, quite clearly, or the cut lengths are on here. It makes no difference, it gives the totals of the quantity and the cut lengths here in this particular instance, and a note for the supplier to send back to us the quote number and the date of the quote and the total of the quote including GST. Now, assuming we get that quote back, here we can record, and say for argument's sake Bunnings quote is cheaper, we can say record the quoted price. So I come in here, and here is where we record Bunnings quote number. So it might be Q123 is their quote number, and received on the whatever the date, we'll say the 4th of November, and say their price was $4,500. Now you'll notice what will happen up here, the quote number will now be recorded, the quoted price will be recorded, and the order value will change to $4,500. So we'll say accept. Now when we print this order, print this tagged order, we would say print it without the individual costing for each item, and that's how the order would go off to the supplier. So here it says, in accordance or acceptance of this order implies you accept the quoted price stated above. Any queries, please contact us immediately. So in fact, if they accept the order, then they're accepting it for their quote at that price there for that date there. So that's how you can manage your orders as well. So even though they might be generated for one nominated supplier, we can change the nominated supplier to suit our own requirements. Now, in order for this video not to get too large, what I will do here is asking us whether we want to print out the cut list again. If I say yes, we'll get that cut list a second time, and that would go with that particular order, and this time it'll go to Bunnings, not Forsyth and Romano. So I'll end this video here, and I'll come back showing you how you can email this order, and how we create standalone orders like instant orders. So that's the end of this.